I am so excited about today's very spontaneous thought in the way of it's just been what I've been navigating this last week. Now, I normally talk about that, but I was sitting down today and I was like, what do I want to talk about in the podcast today? And something that has become so big for me at the moment and what I'm helping a lot of women through is the nervous system. Now, for so long, I'm going to tell you, I had this imposter syndrome, and I'm sure you all have it, and I still do a lot of the time. But I can't teach about this because I'm not some neuroscientist or some expert in all things, right? Here's the thing. We all learn little pieces of information and no one is an expert in anything, right? You can have all the degrees in the world, but there's always new things to learn and new things to be with. And so I want to put it in a way that helps me understand it so that it might be able to help you. Because to me, the nervous system can be so complex and there's so many things that happen and affect our nervous system, but we get to have it in a way where it gets to be understandable, digestible, and honor where we're at, because there's so many people talking about the different ways to be. And for high-performing women like you are, because you found this for a reason, when we talk about the nervous system, we're talking about your automatic nervous system, right? It's literally on what do we do? Is this good? Is this bad? And the thing with this is that is based on our experiences, our life, what we've been through, all the pieces, right? And so as we're going through life, if we have experienced trauma, and I want to preface this to be different because I think it gets to be in a different box, we then will experience things differently, right? We will see something someone else may see as good and healthy, we may see as not so good and scary, right? Because of the trauma that we have lived. Now, I want to also preface that trauma is based on how you experience an event. It's not on the event. A lot of people go oh, that person's never been through a traumatic event. That is really not, there's no such thing as obviously there's very big events which have big impact and can be quite traumatic. Yes. And though you can have an experience of an event and someone next to you can be at the same event and not experience trauma from it because it's your experience of the event. So don't let anyone minimize that, right? Because here's the piece is trauma can be in all sorts of sizes, right? Like everything you can have, maybe you only have a few things that come from it. Maybe you have a lot of things that come from it, right? But it's your perceived experience of that event, not what other people think you should get from it, right? And so what that happens is it actually distorts our system. So we might then, and this has happened to me so many times, this is why I want to bring this up, is because we might then perceive something as bad and our brain's no, right? Big red, because that has happened to us or something negative came about from that experience. Now, this can go so many ways, right? We could sit here and talk about all the different ways that this could go. But for example, I use my own experience. For me, because I had trauma around being raped, there were parts of me that were, when they would touch, I'd get triggered, right? And so to some people, when someone puts their hand on their leg, you may not think anything of it, right? But for me, that was one of the things that brought up more than what I could explain to a lot of people who didn't know about my experience. So, and I brought up a really extreme experience there. I didn't mean to, but so hopefully no one gets triggered by that. If you do, please breathe through your nervous system. Breathe, allow yourself to come out of it. Keep breathing and come back to your breath. Because that's another piece that brings us back into our body. Anyway, bit off track. So that brings alarm bells, right? So then I'm don't come near me. I keep safe distance, or there's maybe different ways I deal with that in that sense. So then if we look about what this looks like in many different things in everyday life, it can be small things, big things, or et cetera, et cetera. If we think we're unsafe our nervous system is like fight, flight, or freeze. Okay. Now, in a bad way, like in a holy shit, we won't survive way, instead of in a way where these can actually be quite helpful. So, for example, freeze is allowing you to sleep and fully rest and fully recover, right? In its safe form. In its unsafe form, it is like, holy crap, we can't move. We're physically stuck and we can't get out of a situation because we believe that, like, that's it. We're just stuck. And so a lot of people get into a freeze response and they can't do anything. Maybe they can't speak. Maybe they don't want to move. Maybe they want to, et cetera, go outside, meet people, all the things, right? And they're in this response. And that can mean they dull out on TV. I've done that many times where I've just been like, I need to freeze on this couch right now. And I catch what it is, allow myself to move through what I'm going through. But there were many times when I didn't catch it, right? And so that can then lead to, and same with fight or flight, can then lead to substance addiction. And if you've heard any of my story, the one night when I just kept drinking and drinking and drinking, and lucky a friend called me and then I was vomiting and she was like, are you okay? And I was like, I'm fine. And then realized, holy shit, I'm not okay. So, these experiences come from numbing out, right? So we're choosing maybe alcohol, maybe food. I did that a lot. I ate my feelings and, or didn't eat. Another way of doing it, or exercising till I'm in so much pain I can't do it anymore, right? And that could be for the fight or the flight response, right? So those could be in an exercise sense. For me, they were like push your body to the extreme for pain or for, just running away. And so them in the extreme response can be quite detrimental to life, right? So if we think about that, it's not obviously ideal to be living our life that way. And then the other way, when it's safe, freeze, like I said before, is like sleep, is like allowing yourself to relax fully and allow your nervous system to be free and just and then, fight could be, or fight and flight could be a little bit of like playtime or enjoying or moving or like allowing yourself to do fun movement, right? When it's safe. So here's the kicker is like when we perceive it as safe and then these other parts of our system come into play, it's like we literally are in this safety and maybe the fight or maybe the flight or maybe the freeze, but in the safe version of that. And what happens is when we have a resilient nervous system, we can actually jump from one to another, and two can coexist at the same time, right? So when it's safe and, you're in freeze, you're asleep, you're enjoying, you're relaxed, you're letting go, all the things, right? When you're, either in fight or flight, or maybe, I don't know if you wouldn't have them together, but when you put one with another, you could be playing or having fun or running around, like flight and running and playing a running game with other people, and just safe. So it's like when they coexist, and we have reevaluated and learnt how our nervous system works and how we can keep the safety in things that are safe, right? Because we definitely need that unsafe part to be like, when things are not okay, to choose to leave, right? To choose that flight, to walk on, to leave the situation, maybe to fight if we need to get out of something, and freeze if when you're a snake, right? And then just not move so the snake can go and have its day and we're good. So there's ways that our system it supports us, because through the day we should be able to flow through one state to another, have a couple of states working together, all of these pieces. And that is going to help us with a regulated nervous system. Because I think people talk about this and everyone's like, oh, that means 100% of the time I should be Zen. That's not the world we live in. And here's the thing. If you go live out in the middle of the forest and you pick your food and do that, if you were living like that, there is still hunting and gathering, right? So there's still going to be times when you're getting chased by a dragon. Like primarily, we're meant to be in all states of our nervous system, because if you can't be in fight or flight, you're not catching that tiger or whatever, that deer or whatever you're chasing for dinner that night, right? So our system is used to being in all these different ways. The problem is we're either, and I want to say problem, but that's not the word I want to use, but it's kind of what I've got coming through. So please change that word if you have a better word for that. But the situation is that when we do this, if we're unable to go from one to the next, then what we're doing is we're just keeping ourselves in hypervigilance, right? We're just always in, oh, it's not safe. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Push, 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 push. High-performing women, that's what we're taught to do. And that's not true. We're gatherers. We sit in circles. We talk as women. We are in this beautiful energy where that's how we serve each other and the community. And it's so interesting because now we're trying to live in this world where we're trying to be like the men, I guess, and going out and fighting and killing our food and doing all these things, which is fine. And so we also have to understand that our nervous system needs to hold both. It's the same when we talk about the masculine and the feminine, right? You need masculine structure. I was having a chat to a client about this just yesterday. We're talking about the river, and I've spoken about this before, but I'll go into it again, is like, think of it as a riverbed. And the riverbed is the masculine, right? And then, so it holds the structure, it holds it all together, it keeps it all in, right? It's protecting the water, the animals, all the thing, which is the feminine, which is the flow of the water, which is the creativity, which is the giver of life, right? And allowing the sustainability of life, because you think we have babies, all of this, they grow up, all the things, we keep it going. And you provide, your milk for them, you provide food, you provide shelter, you provide all these things. So does the river for the fish, for any other animals that come and drink from the river, and for the ecosystem of the plants. And, when there's a rock, it doesn't just sit behind it, it flows around it and goes with the flow. So the structure of that is that the riverbed is taking it where it wants to go. So this is in everyday life too. We think like, if we do need structure, we do need the masculine. We all have masculine and feminine in us, whether you're a man or a woman, it's irrelevant. You have both. Sorry to burst the bubble if you've never heard that before, but you have both. So honoring your masculine and your feminine is really, really important. And so when we have that happening, that also allows for the flow and the understanding. And then if we look at the trauma and the nervous system, we also have to relearn what that looks like if we have had traumatic experiences. And if we haven't, and you've had a beautiful, blissful life, I'm really happy for you. And I think, it's important to acknowledge that all of that exists, right? Like everyone has a different experience. Some people have trauma, some people don't have trauma, some people have more trauma than others. And what that means to you is what you make it mean. So, we only live the life that we focus on. So if we keep focusing on that trauma, we're going to keep living in a freeze, like I'm scared, holy crap, I can't do this, freeze response, a fight response, or a flight response. And it's not until we're curious. Now, this is the biggest piece for me. And I think this is the biggest thing with my clients is I sat with a client yesterday and I was saying, let's get curious. And we're talking about money. And, it's a neutral resource, right? But a lot of the time when you're in your fear, right? So when we don't have enough resources in life, and I'm going to use the word resources or abundance or however you like to see it, what happens is we're in a fear and scarcity state, right? Because there's bills and there's all these other things that we have to pay for. Because that's how our society works. It's not like a bartering system. It's like you pay money. So money gets a really big pedestal, especially if you're in business. Holy moly. And I think for me, navigating that, leaving, which is so funny, leaving a full-time career and then coming into this different flow and this different understanding, and you're going to laugh, I'm building different structures in my business to hold the flow, to hold my creativity. It's the same with money. You build structures like bank accounts and you honor the fact that it flows in. But when you are attached to it, it has to serve me, it has to do that. Imagine having a partner like that who's like, you have to do this and you have to do that or I won't love you. Would you stay? Definitely not. So the thing is with money is a lot of the time we put a lot of expectation on it and we give it a lot of, power. And it's not always, yes, I get it when you're in fear and scarcity. Trust me, moving through the last few months of my life, it is an interesting concept of how different money looks than when you actually have lots of it flowing in. And it can be linked to different parts of your childhood. So if you've had really good relationship with money growing up, this may not even affect you. But if you haven't, or you've come from a house where money was scarce, or all these things, a lot of time we have all this programming, right? Because all of this is just programming from our childhood, from, friends, family, or society, whatever. So you have this programming that money doesn't grow on trees, or, there's never enough money, or what's another good one? I'll think of a few more, but there's heaps of them. There's so many that we're told, and that's not true. I mean, money is literally currency. It's a current of energy that moves through the world. And when you allow it, like everything else, and don't hold on tight to it and grip it and be like, give me all of it, and you just are curious and let it be, and honor in the way of business, what you're putting out there. I was telling her this analogy, which I absolutely love, is like in business, a bit of a side tangent, it's like throwing a fishing, I don't even fish. I don't know how I even got this analogy, but it's like throwing a fishing rod in and like just waiting, and then like waiting for a bite. So it's like putting your offer out there and then you're sort of like waiting for a bite. And there's some people, they take some time and they flow fight. Some people have got other things going on. Some people don't resonate with you. Some people, are like, oh, not for me now, or I'm not ready. All these things happen, right? And here you are holding this rod and you're like, oh, it'd be nice if people, would buy it, right? And we were talking about this because it was the attachment of money part, and it was about, the buying of business, like things of business. And the thing is, when you let go, what happens is that's when you receive, right? Because it's when you hold on tight to something so tight. You imagine, like, when your parents hold you tight and you're like, no, get off me. It's like you're like suffocating it. It's not going to come in. Why would it? But then it's like when you let it go and you're like, don't give it so much power and meaning, and you just say, like, I'm putting my stuff out there. If it serves you, amazing. If it doesn't, amazing. And you're just letting people know, so you give them power to buy from you if that's what serves them, right? And you just keep putting it out there so that more people find out, so that the people that are meant to come into you in a business sense and that are meant to pay for your service will, right? That's just the beautiful receivership that you get from giving them this massive transformation. And so that's what I fucking love. Like, I love the fact that you get to be a facilitator of transformation. And like, my clients have the most incredible transformations. Like, even just with that one session with her yesterday, the energy that we moved, the perspective that we changed, the subconscious programming that we got rid of. And then today she had even bigger things land, right? Because it's never just in the session. It's like, how does that have a ripple effect on your life? And then how does that look in the grand scheme of it all? So we're talking about the nervous system. We're talking about, how that impacts life. Because when we are in scarcity and fear, right? So we talked about the masculine, we talked about the feminine, we talked about being in scarcity and fear. That also can change what we see as safe and unsafe. Because you may be able to pay your bills, you may be able to, or pay rent or all the things, but it might be tight. And that could constrict your whole body. So then you're also not in a state where you can receive, definitely, because don't ever say, like, you can receive in any state. I want to like kill that thing where people go, oh, you can't receive when you're sad, or you can't receive when you're angry. That is all bullshit. You can receive at any point in your life, and change that programming for yourself, right? We're talking about money. So it's like, if you allow yourself to, let go of control, love that domain, and let yourself actually be with the fact that it's a beautiful resource and you get to receive it, and it comes in all the time, and it's always going to come to you when you're not suffocating it and you're not obsessing over it, but you build the structure to bring it in. And this is in a business sense, right? I mean, it's in every sense. If you have a job, same thing, right? You bring the structure to bring it in, and then when it flows in, you allow the currency to flow in and out. You allow yourself to be with that and honor that you can buy the things, you can pay rent, you can do all these things. Now, what happens is a lot of people, when they get to a point where that is not secure, paying their rent, paying all these, like the basic stuff, right? That's when the body gets into a state of like, fear. Like this is not safe, we're not good. And it'll constantly have these times where the whole body will have a reaction. A lot of times you'll know if you've ever had, and I wouldn't believe that no one hasn't, but negative thoughts about yourself, like I can't provide, maybe even in a workout sense, I'm not going to be able to get through this. All these like negative thoughts start coming in. I can't make rent. I can't do this. Oh my gosh, I'm a failure. And it just gets worse and worse, right? And that's when your nervous system is also on board with that, because it's like reliving sometimes your childhood memory of like not being safe, being visible, or when you're successful or all these things, then it's not safe or all these things. So you start building these stories. And what happened was I realized that for me in my childhood, I had this moment where I realized that I used to go and play sport and I used to want to impress my parents so much, right? And then we'd come home in the car and my parents would tell me all the things that I didn't do right in the game. And I was already so hypercritical of myself that I took that on and I listened, and I would just beat on myself constantly, like just the thoughts and like you're not good enough and you're not worthy and all these things. So what was happening in my life is when I would become visible or seen and go out into the world and put my gifts out, I would sabotage myself, right? Because I would be like, oh, that's not safe. So my nervous system is already bracing for nothing to work and nothing to be safe and it not to be good, and mean to not be good enough or worthy, because it wasn't safe to be seen or to receive or to be successful, all these things, right? And when you're in a structure where that's just the next step, you don't really think about these things. But when you come back to your home environment, that is exactly why I came home. It was not to, be in them again and relive it, but it was to rewire these parts of me that had been dug deep. And although I'd moved through a lot of these things, there were still parts that were hanging on. And it was so interesting to relive it. And what happens in the nervous system is like you go back to the old feelings of where it was. Maybe your body, maybe you feel anxiety in your chest. Maybe you feel just like you can't relax or your brain won't stop, or there's so many things happening and your body feels like tense and you just can't function, or you're like, I can't do anything, or you freeze or you fight or you run, all of these things, right? And I've done them all. So it's like so interesting when you come back into your home environment because you're around the same people, but you're trying to not co-regulate with them, because that's a whole other thing about the nervous system and why they say that you should, the sum of the 5 people you spend time with is because you're co-regulating with the people around you, right? So your nervous system is co-regulating, especially if you're in a relationship. You're literally both co-regulating your nervous system. So if someone's nervous system is off, then it's going to have an effect on the partner. And that's just a fact of nervous system, especially when you're like enmeshed. So it's like that can be like a mother-daughter, mother-son, dad-daughter, dad-son, partner, et cetera, right? You're in a mesh relationship. Not everyone's in that sort of relationship, but that's a whole other thing. But when your nervous system is co-regulating with that person, then obviously your energy, like same thing, like with energy, it's like you're in their energy, their vibration, and you're catching what they're having, or like if there are more different people getting hooks and threads attached to them, then they're going to come in and that's going to affect you too. And it's like a whole thing, right? The whole thing. So in an energetic sense, in a body, nervous system sense, in a thought sense, because you're always talking about these things and you're both casting spells when you speak. So it's just you're having the same, maybe not the same conversations, but you might have different beliefs or the same beliefs, but that starts to mesh as well. And yeah, it makes a huge difference to your life. And such an interesting concept to think about. But when I came back and I was like, holy crap, my nervous system is literally co-regulating because I'm spending so much time. And I'm actually realizing that a lot of my childhood here had a lot of things which I knew, but it was like reliving, but rewiring how that looks and what that gets to be. And so this is why the nervous system excites me so much, because I've been doing a lot of nervous system work in the last few months. And I believe there'll be much, much more to come. And I want to help high performing women realize that the nervous system is about being resilient and in a way being able to flow from one thing to other, but not being in such a heightened state that safety is not possible, because you can always be safe, still be, running or doing all these other things, but it not be unsafe or in a way where it's threatening or life-threatening. So it's like honoring the nervous system in all its pieces and allowing yourself to move through it as a high-performing woman. But if you don't have the ability to regulate it in the way when you need to, then that's the piece, because you will have times where it'll spike. You will have times when you're in fight or flight. You will have times when you're in freeze, when you're sleeping, all those things. But if it's in a way that doesn't feel safe or protected or, all those things, and that's not going to be a good thing. So if you're in that heightened state all the time, you're in burnout, right? Like that puts you into those pieces where you can't function anymore. Maybe your health goes downhill. Maybe all of these pieces go downhill, right? And so you don't have any energy, you don't have any vitality, you don't have any life. You're just doing and you're constantly functioning, high functioning, but you're not actually looking after yourself. And what happens is other things in the back have to crumble. So I want to help women, and that's what I'm doing actually this weekend called She Remembers. It's a end of every month. I'm running this in-person event in Newcastle in my house. It's only going to be 5, maybe 6 people. I'm keeping it very small, very intimate, couple of hours where we go deep into understanding and being with the nervous system and actually feeling it in our body, not being in our head. Because yes, I've just told you all these different things about the nervous system, but until you feel it, you're not going to understand what that feels like in your body. And I didn't either. I didn't realize how much in my life I was going in and out of these different states. But because I've had time to process and be with my nervous system, I can feel it going from one to the other and what that feels like and if that's good and what's kind of happening. And then if I perceive something is not alert, my brain's like, then I'm like, okay, wait, let's get curious. Why? What's happening here? Because the first step, I believe, to all of this is curiosity and what's underneath it or what's happening or why it's coming up. And then a lot of the time what happens is you receive a message, you receive, a thought or a feeling to understand the why behind it first, right? You're like, okay, I'm curious. What's going on here? Is it really unsafe? Is that just old programming? Is that old conditioning? And once you start to allow yourself to get really curious, and I think that's always the first step, and then be with that to understand, what is the next step? Is that I just get to, one is compassion, right? You've got to have love for yourself. This is the biggest part for me. And I think probably the thing that has changed my life is that the compassion that I have for myself even deeper is wild. It's almost like sometimes when I have these sort of feelings, I'm going through this nervous system upgrade and I'm going through it. Instead of being in it, I'm now sitting out here looking at it, being okay, we know this happens. We know how this works. We know what happens here. We're going to let it play out and be curious on what's underneath it so that we can honor what does the little child inside me need, right? And lots of people see this different ways. You can see the teenager, the 80-year-old you, there's lots of different ways you can look at it. For me, it's the child because I believe that that's where all the programming happened. And I go back and be what does that child need? And sometimes she just needs love. Sometimes she needs to be heard. Sometimes she needs to be seen. Sometimes she needs to be honored in who she is, right? But going back and being being with that child and then being cool. Then if you want to ask yourself the question, what would happen if you sort of change that? So if you're curious and then you're I'm giving myself compassion for this, so you don't no longer beat yourself up and you no longer say these horrible things. You'll let it play out as I do, sitting up there watching myself have this whole thing play out. And then be how do I get back into my body? What do I feel in my body right now? Is there something I need to be with? Is there anything going on in my body that I get to be with? And then it's cool, how can I actually honor that? Or what am I going to do that makes the next step? How can I move forward? And so I think this is a beautiful way to do it because it's showing yourself love. It's honoring and being curious about what's going on for you and what you need. And then it's actually giving your younger self that exact thing that they need. Because once you give it, once you show safety, once you show love, once you give it whatever it is that it's calling out for, then you almost feel, well, you feel love for yourself, and you're like, oh, wow, that's all I needed. And I can give it to myself. I don't need it from somebody else. And I think that's really beautiful and liberating. And if the action afterwards is that you want someone to witness you in it, if you want to be held, if you want to talk to someone, absolutely all those things are perfect, right? And sometimes your inner child will say that it wants those things. It doesn't maybe need something from you, or it does, and then it needs something extra. That's totally fine. And I think you just get to be with whatever that is for you. And I'd love for you to try that practice next time you feel your mind going on a rampage. That's what I like to call it. And allow yourself to be with that, because it's a really beautiful, beautiful process. And I'd love for you to think of something now maybe that you've been through in maybe the last week. You could be going through it right now. And I'd love for you to just be curious and go through that. First, be curious. What is it? Like, what's underneath it? Why are you feeling that way? Then give yourself compassion and love. Then ask what your younger self needs, because what will come up might be something like an old story, maybe even an event, a memory of an event. And then I want you to give yourself love, and I want you to then be like, how can I honor what I need in this moment? What does my inner child need? And then honor that. And if there's another step to that, allow yourself to do that as well. Because maybe your adult needs something as well. And that's all perfect. And I'd love for you to go through that process. I'd love for you to share with me how that helps and supports you. And if there's any other women out there that you know that might need this at this time, I would love for you to share this with them, because I think it's really potent and really beautiful and such a great way to honor you and you moving through whatever you're moving through right now. Yeah, I would love to hear from you. So make sure you send it to them. You subscribe. I would love to, have you like and comment and subscribe. I had a giveaway today to give to a beautiful woman, but I actually didn't have anyone who got on the last episode and liked, commented, and subscribed. So this is your chance. I have one more giveaway next episode, and I would absolutely love for you to comment, answer the question that I put on the episode in the comments on YouTube, and then share it as a bonus on YouTube, on Instagram, and tag the Unapologetically Wild podcast with Katie. So there's a beautiful page. If you haven't gone and follow it, go follow it. And make sure that you tag the page so that that's an extra entry, so that you can win the incredible prize of a holistic health and energy session with me. Anyway, I'm sending you lots of love. I love you all. I'll see you soon, and have a wonderful day.